Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here to chair this session about IoT and global roaming. I think you saw Ron Rinsney's presentation this morning about our achievement in global roaming as well as domestic and international, which is the first public roaming result in the world. Okay? So, and together with roaming, it's important the devices involved from network to another network are interoperable, to another network. So that's why we have this topic here today about IoT, which is very important. WiMAX Forum has programs on IoT certification, testing, and so on to satisfy all the needs on the device, on the base station, as well as on the all IoT operators, as well as the mobile internet certification. And roaming, WiMAX Forum announced the start of roaming trial in Amsterdam last June in the Global Congress. So at that time, we took initiatives to start a roaming trial in Taiwan with a goal to demonstrate global roaming in this conference. And after a few months of hard work, we achieved that, and so that's one of our major topics today. We have four panelists here, answering four panelists here. First, John Dubois, he's the director of the Global Roaming Working Group, and he was going to talk about WiMAX Forum's Global Roaming Program. And Michael Lai of PeggyOne, he's the CEO of PeggyOne, and you all know that PeggyOne has more than 100,000 subscribers now. Okay? So very outstanding achievement in terms of the progress in terms of the network subscribers. And Peter Yan is president of Datong Infocom in Taiwan. Currently, the only network that's been commercially launched. And we have another speaker, Kelly Dang. Kelly Dang was stuck in Japan last night, and actually I believe he's on the way to the conference now. So he will be here anytime soon. And Digital Bridge Communication is one of the very outstanding greenfield operator, WiMAX operators in Taiwan. So we'll hear him talk about a lot about how they started this network and how they operate. So the way this become conducted is I'll ask each panelist to give a brief introduction about the company and their work in this area. And after that, I will ask some questions. And I also welcome the questions from the audience to increase the interaction between the panelists and the audience. Okay, so I would like John to give us a brief introduction. Okay.
Actually, had a couple of slides. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm John Dubois, and I'm a director with the WiMAX Forum. And one of my main areas of work is in the roaming area. And I had a couple of slides here I was going to present when they come up. But as far as interworking and roaming goes, what WiMAX has done as far as a couple of things are very important. Number one is that the network support roaming, so that when you are actually traveling, that your device is able to discover a network, authenticate on that network, and then actually connect to the internet. And the good news is from the WiMAX specifications, with input from the Global Roaming Working Group in the WiMAX Forum, has been designed, architected so that you are able to authenticate using the different EAP methods. And another area that's very important is the interoperability. You need to be able to take a device and have it connect to different networks. It needs to be able to connect to different base stations and ASN gateways. And what's very important in that regard is the interoperability testing and the certification. We need vendors and operators to follow the WiMAX certification process in order to ensure interoperability. And right now, what's happening with the trials is we're discovering that things work very well. There's some minor adjustments that need to be made in order to support roaming. So that's very important too, is the interoperability testing. And then lastly, from a business perspective, you need to be able to support roaming. And the Global Roaming Working Group has been working very hard in that area in establishing agreement templates that can be used between operators, and a whole roaming program that can be followed in terms of the guidelines for implementing roaming, which are being used worldwide. And this is to support the roaming both domestically, for example, between north and south of Taiwan, as well as internationally. And what we're going to see later today is the international roaming that's taking place from a Clearwire over here to Taiwan, to the different networks here. And that's been achieved because of the roaming, or the network specifications support roaming, and then the devices. In the future, what we're going to see is more devices that will support, the connection managers will more readily support roaming. It's kind of an evolution process, exactly what's happened in 2G and 3G roaming. So roaming is very important for WiMAX. It's important to show that WiMAX is truly an international or global technology, and we're making great strides to make roaming a reality. Thank you. Michael? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll just give a brief, quick update in terms of PAC1 first for some of our friends here who doesn't know much about PAC1 background before I go into IoT and global roaming, if I may. First and foremost, PAC1 is the first and leading WiMAX telco in Malaysia, and also one of the very first in Southeast Asian region. We commercially launched our service last year in August. So in about 13 plus months, we have grown over 100,000 subscribers in over 13 months. And thank you. A lot of hard work, but yeah, it can be done. It can be done, especially in markets like emerging economies. I think a lot of people are still wondering whether this WiMAX works. Can we bring subscriber ins and things like that? I guess only one word for that. If you build it, they will come. Yeah. And we built it, they did come. So please don't hesitate, don't doubt it, because the pent-up demand in emerging economy is there. Yeah, for example, in Malaysia, even though we're considered one of the advanced emerging economy around the emerging economies, even with that, we only have about 25% home broadband penetration. So what it means is that 3 out of 4 homes in Malaysia still don't have a broadband. That's one. If you look at a personal or mobile broadband, penetrations for personal and mobile broadband is only about 7%. That means 93 out of 100 Malaysians still don't have a personal and mobile broadband. So the market, the pent-up demand, the thirst for broadband is there. Yeah, and it's just going to continue to grow because, as everyone knows, I mean, I don't have to go through that. Everyone here is convert. Yeah, that the next mega trend will be mobile broadband. So from our experience so far, has been really exciting and a short journey. And what is more important, I think, after the 13 months of journey, just to share some stats with you to see what WiMAX can do in terms of helping your respective country, respective cities' broadband penetration. We went out as a greenfield from ground zero, yeah, from nothing. We had to build our sites from zero as well, from nothing. Last quarter, after about 7 months of launching it, commercial launch after August last year, first quarter of 2009, we took 32% of the new home broadband, new ads for the home broadband market share from the incumbent. So we took about 32% from the incumbent who has been there forever, doing a fixed broadband with coverage all over the country, with providing ADSL all over the country for the last, whenever they have started. I think it has been started forever. I couldn't even remember when the incumbent started, yeah? So we managed to take away about 32% of the market share in first quarter. That's only after 7 months of going to market commercially with less than 25% of the population's coverage of West Malaysia, whereas the incumbent has the coverage all over the country. That's number one. Second quarter, we continue to grow our market share in terms of new adds in fixed broadband to 39%. Okay, and incumbent continue we continue to take away market share from them. And this quarter, well, we ourselves definitely continue to grow in terms of our new adds. We're just anxious to wait for the incumbent to announce their result very soon. Then we'll know whether we continue to increase our market share in new adds. And what is more important in terms of these stats that I'm sharing with you is that all those were done with higher ARPU than the incumbent. I think you can buy market share, you can take market share sometimes by sacrificing your ARPU. Yeah, all these are done with a higher ARPU, yeah, the average revenue per user, than the incumbent, without sacrificing our ARPU. So what it means is that the market is there, yeah, the pent-up demand is there, the thirst for broadband is everywhere. It's not, I truly believe broadband today is not a demand deficit issue, it's a supply deficit issue, yeah. There's supply deficit in emerging countries like Malaysia. So plenty of opportunity. Happy to announce it. Last Thursday, we also just make our announcement, our entry into Singapore. So we just gotten our WiMAX license in Singapore. It'll be a very different country to play, yeah, compared to Malaysia. I think we'll be very much like Taipei or Hong Kong. But we believe there's still room to play, even in a very advanced economy like Singapore. We definitely have to work very hard because there's very, very good competitors or very, very good incumbents down in Singapore compared to Malaysia. But we're going to take it, yeah, we're going to take it and run with it. So that's a very quick background in terms of Packet One and what we've done in a short time of about 13, 14 months right now. And from an IoT perspective, which I think the main topic is for today, we are probably one of the very first network to have integrated two different vendors. One definitely, from IoT to me, there's many, many different components. You have the IoT components, which are termed as the DNA, devices, network, and applications. So there's many, many IoT that you have to do. It's not just devices, it's not just about roaming, it's even network itself. For example, we started off with one network providers, and beginning of this year, we have a multi-vendor strategy, so we brought in another network provider, and that itself, you have to integrate back to your core. Yeah, so how do you do that? So that components is very critical. So the network side itself, there is a very important element of IoT as well. And once you have the network element IoT, you're going to have devices IoT, the D with an N part of it. You're going to do all these things. Yeah. And then you have the application part of it, from your BSS, from your OSS, from your AAA, from your billing system. You have to IoT as well, to make sure it works. So it depends on how you define IoT. But to me, the way I define IoT is any two network elements that need to talk to each other, which is from different vendors or different system. You have to do some sort of IoT, whether it's certified or not certified from that perspective. So I guess I'll share more as we go along. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm Datong Infocom. I have a few slides to briefly introduce Datong Infocom. And as a matter of fact, this Michael's record is very encouraging. And then we are greenfield operator that we are looking for this his advice how we are able to do that. So Datong Infocom. This is one. Okay, we launched the service in April timeframe in a small island, Penghu. And then also we launched the service in Kaohsiung, the second largest city in Taiwan. So we're using 4G as our statement that the WiMAX sometimes is hard to explain to the end user. So we're using 4G. It's easy to explain to the user because 3.5G has been in Taiwan for a certain period of time. So the 4G is better than 3.5G. That's how we promote ourselves. And so Datong Infocom is one of a subsidiary of Datong Group. And as a matter of fact, Datong Group is a very, very famous and successful enterprise in Taiwan. They have a lot of subsidiary and also this service. For example, the Datong is, I think it's the biggest 3C appliance company in Taiwan, that we have a lot of retail channel, and then also doing a lot of home appliance, and then do a lot of application and equipment for electrical and the device. And also we have a third largest motherboard and the notebook PC company called the Elite Group, doing the notebook PC. At the same time, they are doing some device and also the handheld MID for WiMAX. And that's how the Daton decided to do the WiMAX, to synergize all the resources in Daton Group. So that's why we have this company established 2 years ago. And then so far that our vision is that using the WiMAX to converge information and communication and entertainment together in one device and in one account. That's our vision, to provide us a full service provider. That's our vision here. And so far that we also have a multi-vendor here, that we built an M-Time project, which is a government fund project that 2 years ago we are using the NEC equipment and has around 200 base stations there. And for the commercial side, that in Kaohsiung and Penghu, we're using Alcatel-Lucent base station here. And then also for the core, in order to integrate these two networks together, we decided to using Starren home agent and also the Bridgewater AAA. So I think that Michael mentioned about those IoT. I definitely fully agree. This, you can imagine these two big companies try to integrate together with so many kind of device. So right now we have a full brand device that from QMI, from AWB, and from D-Link, from whatever, this Jetstream. There's so many devices. So, in order to make that work, we have built our own IoT lab, which include these two major equipment. One is for the network verification. The other one is for device verification. For the network side, because we not only just going to integrate this Alcatel-Lucent base station, and at the same time, right now we're testing a lot of Pico BTS and also repeater and also some of the TMA in order to enhance those uplink capability. So we're doing a lot of IoT for the network side. And then for the device, definitely we have 4 kinds of device. So in order to make work on both sides, on NEC and the Alcatel, there's a lot of work that need to be done for sure. As a matter of fact, besides this network and the device, and the other thing we find out is that the service IoT, there's a lot of applications have to work with those devices. As a matter of fact, we find out when this user buying the dongle, plugging their notebook, sometimes doesn't work. But doesn't work, the reason it doesn't work is because some of the security application on the network, and some because the power of the USB is not enough to power this dongle. So there's a lot of this service IoT need to be done. So as a matter of fact, we have another lab in Daton Group, in the Daton University, doing the IoT for notebook and network, and then all kinds of applications, the security application, the gaming, especially gaming. The gaming, we also find out once the user plug into the dongle, the game doesn't work sometimes. So you have to set some certain parameter in the server side, also in the application side, in order to make the WiMAX work. So there's a lot of application need to be tested. So network IoT, device IoT, service IoT, and application IoT has to be end-to-end to ensure your user able to use this WiMAX. So for roaming, definitely the IoT is the first step for roaming. You have to make sure your device works in the network. So right now we have roaming in progress, divided international roaming and also domestic roaming. As the previous Teddy mentioned that we have 6 operators in Taiwan. As a matter of fact, we do agree doing the shared deployment, which means we build a different city at the same time. So we decide to roam each other within these 6. So we are testing this roaming capability with Firestone, with V, and also with WiMAX and the VTL and the Global Mobile. As a matter of fact, since last week, that we're able to make a roaming successful with WiMAX, which is in the north, one of our north operators. But at the same time, we're doing a global international roaming testing, and so far we are testing with Peggy 1, and then also Clearwire. And then I think yesterday we passed this testing with Clearwire. So that's good news. So we'll continue to do all kinds of roaming testing with UQ and Peggy 1, the Korea Telecom, and Utah, those are big international WiMAX operator here. So, okay, that's my short report, and then give you more information later. Okay, thank you.
Our fourth panelist, Kelly, came at the perfect time. Okay, so the next, we'd like Kelly to give a brief introduction, and then I will load his slide.
Thank you. I appreciate, as you know, I'm just flew in. I was supposed to fly in last night, but the airline's inability to get me on another airline caused me to be late. So their inability to do interoperability has caused me to be globally roaming all over the place. So a little pun there. My name is Kelly Dunn, CEO and founder of Digital Bridge Communications. As we're loading this, I'll just talk a little bit about Digital Bridge. For those of you who don't know us, we're the second largest WiMAX 4G operator in the U.S. We're specifically focused on smaller markets and rural markets. As you may have read, the rural broadband in the United States has become very popular thanks to our new president, President Barack Obama, who set aside $7.2 billion to build rural broadband deployment. And as we've applied for about $285 million in stimulus funding to build out wireless WiMAX systems in the rural U.S. And one of the things that's become apparently clear is wireless and 4G is pretty critical and probably the most cost-effective way to reach underserved areas in the U.S. The other thing that's happening in the U.S., and I think it's happening globally, is with 4G, you have an opportunity to serve the underserved, but also to bridge the gap. I guess there's becoming a global divide on mobility. So just because you have broadband, it shouldn't be determined that you wouldn't have mobile broadband just because of where you live. So that's a little bit history about us. If we can do the next slide. Maybe not. Oh, I can control it myself. And I'll go through these pretty quickly just so we can get to the questions. As I mentioned, we've differentiated product offering. We've been up and running about 3 years. What we did, and very quietly at the same time, Clearwire and Sprint were rolling out, is we rolled out 15 markets. We initially rolled out with Alvarian in a 16E ready or 16D format. We are converting all our markets to 16E, so we have 15 markets up and running. We have a scalable market model from a back office perspective and highly capital efficient way to roll out. Some highlights, as I mentioned, the first carrier in the U.S. to launch true 16.0 mobility. The markets are performing very well. I think most importantly, by the end of this year, we'll have over half our markets will be EBITDA positive on a market-by-market basis. We have a very deep spectrum position. It hasn't been talked about publicly yet, but by the end of the year, we will have spectrum that covers more than 20 million pops as a spectrum position. And as I mentioned, 2010, we're going to very aggressively roll out and deploy a number of markets in different parts of the U.S. and to really step on the gas to have another 4G operator out in the U.S. We have done a lot of testing and a lot of interoperability testing with both Clearwire and other folks in this room. I think, just my general comments, the ecosystem is very important, and I think the more and more operators you have work together and collaboratively are very, very important. The other thing with us in the U.S., and I don't know globally if this applies, but we look at building networks in a very clustered fashion. So we'll deploy an anchor town of a tier 2 town, which is a town of 200,000 to 300,000, and then all the smaller towns around those markets. So we have what we call a broadband serving area. In the U.S., we have about 90% of the people spend about 90% of time within a 90-mile radius of where they live, work, and play. So when you talk about roaming, local roaming is even more important than global roaming for a lot of our markets. And I think that's a very important consideration. The other thing that's important, and I hope we can talk about this in the Q&A, is the interface and interoperability between 3G and 4G. So the ability to provide 4G as a primary capability and mobility, but then the ability to interoperate with 3G. We have a very good relationship, an MVNO relationship of a 3G provider. I think this is a great aspect of the Sprint Clearwire relationship to leverage their nationwide 3G network. We're also looking at other spectrum profiles such as 700 and 2.3, which present great opportunities in the U.S. to have 700, 2.3, and 2.5 all interoperate. Just everyone in this room knows this, and sometimes this is lost in the U.S. market because of the dominance and the PR perspective of LTE. But WiMAX is a very real, very robust, very viable technology that has a future regardless. The 400 plus deployments bode very well, and we as operators are incredibly encouraged to see that the base station pricing, CPE and device pricing, and the ecosystem finally starting to develop. Just as a point of example, when we started 2.5 years ago, we were paying over $250 for a CPE. Now that's dropped below $100. I've always seen that as a tipping point in the U.S. to really make a scalable model from a CPE perspective. We have 16 different devices that are certified and working on our network. We're very closely working with Clearwire and start working with some other global operators on interoperability testing. But the more devices we have, we're starting to sell laptops and netbooks. I think in the U.S., netbooks are going to be incredibly popular as we roll out to really drive demand. And partnerships, as I said, we've been working with Clearwire on some that are now public deals. One of such is that we jointly bid in South Carolina for all the spectrum in South Carolina, which we jointly bid with Clearwire, and looking at how we're partnered and to build out a state such as South Carolina. The other thing that's important, and this is on the roaming, is in August of this year, April of this year, we received an investment and a strategic partnership with an NRTC, which is a National Rural Telecommunications Cooperative. And in that, we signed a master distribution agreement, which allowed us to be the primary aggregator of deploying all WiMAX systems to rural telcos and electric co-ops throughout the country. So think about my comments earlier about the rural broadband, the $7.2 billion in rural broadband. We now have this master service distribution agreement that these folks can't roll out 4G WiMAX networks without us as the operator, back-end operator, dictating the vendor technology and platform. And I think that's real important. The other thing I think in the U.S. is the 4G operators are going to have to build the networks to a consistent standard of QoS and quality, and I think that's very, very key to the success of the industry. And then just promotion, this is just an example of some of the things we do in the market. Our brand name out in the market is BridgeMax, is what we sell under. We have the capability to co-brand or private label with anybody. You can see two powerful brands, BridgeMax right in front of McDonald's, but we have the portability of setting up shop, and that's the true aspect of this technology is when you buy it, it's instantly available, and that's served us very, very well. And then some of our marketing material as well. So the opportunity is now for interoperability and testing. I think one of the things that you're probably going to hear discussed today in the next couple of days is the lead and the opportunity in 4G and WiMAX is shrinking, but we have to step on the gas now. And we as an operator made that decision about 6 months ago to literally raise hundreds of millions of dollars and deploy hundreds of markets to really help drive the demand in the U.S., which hopefully will drive, like Michael's doing in his neck of the woods and others, to really take advantage of the lead and the deep spectrum position that WiMAX operators have. Okay? Thank you.
So after hearing the presentation from the panelists, I think all the operators in the panel or in the audience should be relieved and very excited, especially when you heard Michael saying that the ARPU is high. When you build a network, the customer will come, so you should be very excited. I think audience can start think about questions. But now I'd like to ask the first question about global roaming, because one forum has started a global roaming initiative and the trial at the Interlab in Oregon, Portland. Okay, so I like to want to give a brief status about that trial.
We announced earlier this year that we're putting together a roaming trial in the Intel lab, working with Intel in their lab environment, and we have about, I would say, 14 different vendors: base station, ASN gateway, AAA, clearinghouses, device vendors involved in this. So it's very important to show the interoperability between the different components in a network, including the device to the base station, as well as ASN gateways and AAAs. And we've just completed phase 1 of that trial, which is really testing the interconnectivity. In other words, the ability for a user to go to a visited network and acquire their services. And what we're using is local breakout, where you're actually, what we have was a digital bridge and Clearwire networks, where you go, a digital bridge customer goes to a Clearwire network, and they're getting their services through the Clearwire network with the authentication back to the digital bridge. So it's very important to demonstrate the ability to roam, but not just demonstrate it. This is also an important part of this trial, is to get the operator and vendor community up to speed and able to actually implement commercial roaming services, because trials are nice, but people actually want to be able to use their service wherever they go, and this is an important step for that. The phase 2 that we're going to be testing is the actual billing and settlement, which is very important from a commercial perspective. And one thing I want to say about roaming for WiMAX and 4G, which is different from 3G and 2G, and this is becoming a more important discussion topic, is what's going to happen from a business relationship in the billing. Well, WiMAX cannot repeat the financial models that have been put in place with 2G and 3G, which are volume based. So if you download a megabyte of data, you're charged a huge amount in 3G or 2G, actually 3G. Well, we can't, because right now WiMAX users consume a lot of data. That model isn't going to work, and that's going to be up to the operators to sort out between themselves, but there definitely are going to have to be some different models for 4G. So.
Magnus?
Yeah. Hello. Okay, that was actually my question. Really, what is the panel's view of how settlement, how should things be charged when somebody comes to your network? I mean, what is your perspective of how this should be done? I agree with that. The 3G model is defunct. It should not be repeated. But what is your view? Because if it is that everybody's going to have different models, the end user will be very confused as well. I mean, it has to be. I think what 3G has done correctly is that it's universal. It's very expensive. So what are we from a WiMAX and the panel that is working on this? What is your view there?
Yeah, I'll just one comment, because we're working through a lot of these issues now, but I think one of the things is, from a contractual standpoint, as John said, this can't be the 3G all over again, because there was definitely, I think there needs to be a sense of fairness and to make sure everyone's business model works. So one of the things we're focused and concerned on is the way you can manage traffic and kind of share some costs and share some revenue opportunity side. So I think from a contractual standpoint, you want to make sure that you don't have in the agreement where one side of the party gets taken advantage of, and I think that's one of the keys that we're looking at as we set up these roaming agreements. The other thing I was just going to add, it's a little side comment, but as we do interoperability and roaming, we have to design these things from the customer's perspective out rather than the operator's perspective in. And I think that's another key as well, as far as, and that extends to authentication, the way you fire up your device, et cetera, because if you see the way people are so frustrated getting on a Wi-Fi network, that is where you really succeed, is that point of moment of truth is when a customer turns on their laptop and the operators have already done the hard work between each other, and it becomes a very simple experience. And by the way, I have a fundamental belief that people will pay more and a premium for a simple, quality experience.
In Taiwan, we have this 6 operator going to launch a service. As I mentioned, that we're going to share the deployment, but at the same time, we do the roaming each other. So at this point, that our view, at least from my point of view, that because we pretty much do offer the flat rate service to our own customer. So at the same time, that in the initial stage, that we probably have free roaming each other at the beginning, right? Because the users not much traffic there. So in order to warm up the market here, so I think we should go for the free roaming at the beginning. But once this traffic become higher, we still believe that we should go to the flat rate charging. For example, let the user easy to understand how much you're going to pay for each day or for hour or something like that. So I think that from a user point of view, the easier, the simpler, they will use the more. And that's our view from this point.
Well, from my perspective, totally agree with both Kelly and Peter. I think one chance that we have compared to the incumbents today, the incumbents actually make money on 2 things, right? I think everyone knows it. They make money on time. The more you talk, the more you call, the more you pay, right? That's one. They make money on space. Yeah, the further you are, the more you pay. Okay, but I think we are in a different world. I mean, WiMAX is an IP world. In an IP world, the world is flat. Yeah, so if I'm a user, so we should all start from a user perspective. I think that's number one. I think we all agree. So if I'm a user, I myself, I would love to have a very seamless, as easy to understand. Don't give me so many different charges when I go to a different country. I'm get confused. I'm not going to use it to start with. So I think we're going to design, even though we're just very early stage right now. We're still talking about working on the technical right now. Next one is working on the commercial part of it. I would personally like to see that international roaming, global roaming for WiMAX users, as simple, as seamless, as easy to understand. If we have to do the hard work at the back to barter trade, whatever, let's do it as an operator on the back end. But to the user on the front, I think it has to be as simple, as easy to use.
Yeah, I don't have that much to add other than to say, yeah, the models that are used in 3G is a volume base. So the more you use it, the more you pay, and the charges bear no reality to costs. And there's different models that can be used in 4G. For example, you can have a day rate or a session rate, and it can be very low to keep the price in line, cost very low, and not have it volume based. Because in WiMAX, you turn your computer on or you initiate your service, you could have 10 megabytes or 100 megabytes, and in the 3G world, you're talking hundreds of dollars, and that's not going to work for 4G.
Can I do one follow-up? Yes. One thing that seems to have worked somewhat on the Wi-Fi, if you take, is the whole Boingo, or one of these global clearinghouses. So wherever you go in the world, it is Boingo, and if you subscribe to Boingo, it's pretty much the same price wherever you go for a day, for a week, or whatever. Is there something in the working group around, so to speak, having a universal WiMAX clearinghouse that everybody signs up to, and it is easy for? Because I think if you're talking about the end user, I think that is what you're saying, that it is, it's everywhere I go, it's the same experience, and that's what we want.
Hello? Yeah, as far as the clearinghouse go, or a global clearinghouse, the clearinghouse community is very developed, and there's about 6 different clearinghouses that work within the WiMAX forum. I think you definitely want to create the home network experience wherever your customer travels, and that's the goal, is when they're traveling on their network or off their network, the way you access your service, if you have a notebook and you click on the connection manager, you just connect. That's the same experience that you need when you roam with WiMAX. As far as having that experience globally, the hub model is something that's talked a lot about. which could be very helpful for WiMAX community, where you have one connection to a clearinghouse to connect to the world. The WiMAX forum itself is not actually developing a specific hub operation, because we're leaving that to the community of the clearinghouses to do that, which, as I said, is very well developed.
Very good questions. In fact, we're actually, even for some of the things that we're doing, we're actually looking at the clearinghouse concept as well. Yeah, so that the experience will be seamless, the experience will be similar wherever you are, wherever you go in the world.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that when we are doing the testing with Michael and also Clearwire, we go through one of clearinghouse already that they helping us to do all the settlement and also the testing. As a matter of fact, that make our life much easier. So eventually, we'll provide a good experience to the end user. And also, in Taiwan, originally we do have a plan to do one roaming center for all 6 operators, but that idea is still following up. Try to make a roaming more easier, more simple. That's the plan we have.
You know, and I had one more thought as a little additive to Magnus' question, because I concur with these guys, but I think there needs to be coordination among operators. So whoever's stepping up as an operator, whether a regional, national operator, and I'm saying this out loud without kind of previewing this with my board or company, so I don't commit ourselves to something. But if you think about it, I wouldn't mind looking at a way, if I'm going to roll out 100 markets that are smaller markets to Clearwire markets, that there's almost some kind of obligation to seed the market to start ahead by deploying to an airport and train station before we actually deploy the rest of the market. So when you think about roaming, figuring out the areas that you can get the most concentration or mass or where the most demand for mobility would be, and really looking at the business model before you deploy a full deployment into a market, looking at just deploying the heavy concentration. If you were going to map where all the demand is from broadband, it's airports and train stations, for example. And if we did that in a coordinated effort on a national and global basis, I think you can even get more traction, because you're getting to where a lot of the demand's going to exist early on before you fully launch a market. So it's something to think about beyond the way we kind of seed the market. So.
Gear to IoT. I think, as mentioned, there are many kind of IoT, in the network, between network service and so on. And one of the forums started, formal WiMAX IoT certification program a couple of years ago. So my question to the panelists is, how does the one forum certification help you resolve the IoT issue?
I think from our perspective, definitely, I think any IoT has to begin with the consumer in mind. Yeah, I think to me, IoT makes sense if it's as seamless, as easy for the sake of consumer. I think that should be the fundamental philosophy or principle that we worked on. So with that, to me, any IoT should help to the consumer a few things. One, to the consumer or to the operator, right? A few things. One is definitely the speed to market. Yeah, if a WiMAX Forum certification group, yeah, which I think we're definitely a very active part of it, to participate, so that it will help operators to speed to market in terms of devices, yeah, even in terms of network IoT and things like that. So those will be helpful to the consumer in the end of the day, because if we can do that, then consumer will have a very seamless experience. Yeah, from their perspective, I think that is one differentiation we got to have in the WiMAX world compared to the current 3G world or the incumbent world. That's number one. Second, I think IoT got to have cost effectiveness as well. Yeah, the cost effectiveness to both consumers and also to the operators. So we can do that. I think those are principal philosophy that we should work on. And I think we have to continue to work on, even for WiMAX Forum, to continue to work on the per device charges per IoT. Yeah, so we can make that we can bring down the barrier. I think there's still a certain barrier because the WiMAX ecosystem is still pretty young. I mean, even though we have matured in a short time, but I think there's still a lot of work needs to be done. So if we can bring down the barrier in terms of WiMAX certifications from an IoT perspective, from both the device manufacturers to the operators, that will help in terms of developing the whole IoT movement in the WiMAX world even faster, even better, and also bring benefits to the consumer. Last but not least, I think it was spoken about from the last panel. OIoT should work towards in the final, I guess, frontier is to actual retail readiness, right? So if IoT could get us ready for retail readiness, then in the future, we probably, from an operator perspective, also from consumer perspective, it's going to be very simple for them to pick up any devices from anywhere. Yeah, and we don't have to limit it to carry it ourselves from that perspective. So that's the three things that I'll be looking at from IoT. Yeah.
I think this WiMAX forum, this IoT definitely help us a lot in the initial stages. But at the same time, that as Michael mentioned about should be cost effective. As a matter of fact, at this time, that when we try to order some of the new device or either dongle or indoor CPE, most of them they hesitate go to the stage because they cost quite a lot. Especially, for example, you have one model there, and then you second day you have a new version coming in. They have to do another IoT that really pull this vendor away sometimes. So as a matter of fact, one meeting we have with last week that I think one of the operators suggests this mother and child this model, which means that once you have a testing this one major model version, then the child version should be less cost, and then maybe speed of time, and also reduce this the hesitation of this vendor going to this WiMAX forum testing. I think that's the suggestion that we have, because once you have more time and more cost there, then eventually they will transfer to the operator or transfer to the end user. I think that's the issue we have to somehow resolve.
Yeah, and my quick comment is I think we need to be very careful because the technology is evolving so fast that we don't get stuck, spend a lot of time and energy trying to qualify and interoperability testing on devices, that by the time it's done, we don't need it. A PC card is a great example. I think we spent a lot of effort on that damn thing, and it was just frustrating me because it's by the time it was tested, approved, great, the market was zero. In USB dongles is where 100% of our focus should have been. So I think this room and this industry has to focus on what are netbooks going to be, what a year from now is going to be the device, and don't try to boil the ocean. And I think it's the obligation of the operators to set the prioritization and the market focus, because we're the ones close to the customer. We can't let, God forbid, the engineers or people in the back room that aren't really seeing where the market is going. And I think that is imperative. And we need to really think about the last year and a half and the lessons we've learned and how to apply those going forward.
I guess, okay, the question from here.
Hi, this question is for Kelly and Michael. My question is related to voice. So you are claiming that you want to compete with incumbents, right? So AT&T, majority of its, in your case, will be AT&T or Verizon. In your case, it's probably Malaysia Telecom. Majority of their output comes from voice. And we discussed a lot about roaming because you want to expand your coverage. By expanding your coverage, the cheapest way is to ally and roam. What's your thoughts about having a one application? Because one of the advantages you have is you literally can destroy an AT&T based on having all you can eat much cheaper because the efficiencies that you can gain. But I haven't heard from any of the panelists, especially I want to direct my questions to Kelly and Michael in terms of voice roaming, because to me, coming from the incumbency all my career, I think voice is the killer application, so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and I think it's an excellent question, and I spent part of my career, what I refer to lovingly as in the belly of the beast at Verizon and AT&T, and you know, they're fantastic companies, incredibly well positioned, and I think we need to think of two things. First of all, voice is a tremendous application for a mobile broadband network because you're adding an application over a mobile IP
network that's built to handle this, and the cost efficiencies of doing VoIP over 4G are phenomenal. The problem you have is coverage, and the problem is you have is ubiquity. So I think we as an industry, especially in the U.S., need to think about that from a spectrum position, interoperability with the Sprints of the world on a wholesale 3G network, and those all have to come together, and you have to have devices that start off with 4G as their primary, but then will revert back to 3G. And oh, by the way, in the home, may go over to Wi-Fi. And I've seen there's some great companies in the U.S., startup companies, Davidas is one of them, that has working phones and models that interoperate between Wi-Fi and 3G. And to insert WiMAX in there is not a big deal for them. So I think that's the thing that we need to do. I think one of the things, the other thing that we've been very successful is rolling out VoIP. Because this is a IP-based network with quality service, committed information rates, we are being able to compete on a business standpoint for voice very effectively. So you're doing a DS1 replacement with VoIP on top of it with a mobility layer that becomes a very powerful product. So the answer is it's a combination of spectrum coverage and partnership relationships with, we'll call them enlightened 3G operators that have the capability to provide a wholesale coverage where you don't have 4G. The other thing I'll just add and turn this over to Michael is that the other thing I'm very, very excited about, I've been very educated in the last 3 or 4 months about pico and femtocells, and really re-looking at the way we're designing networks. I look at a hybrid. I started out in kind of the macro cell, big coverage, coverage versus, capacity. Now with pico and femtocells, and a lot of people and vendors in this part of the world are really driving that technology, and the cable cos in the U.S. are really thinking creatively how to leverage their strand, their fiber that runs all through a market, and how to do a smaller cellular design, and that's really going to help your coverage on voice as well. So I think a lot of things, this is one of the most important things we'll do in the 12 months that this is a whole shooting match. The voice application is yet another application on mobile IP 4G broadband is I think just incredibly important.
I think this is a very good question. So for our case, we have very tentatively and purposefully broken down to 3-step strategy. We're not going to compete voice directly. In fact, the market share that I shared with you just now was on connectivity only, was only purely on broadband. Yeah, because voice is a different animal. The voice is different. You got to be really, really careful when you go into the incumbent territory in voice. So we compete directly with them on connectivity and also on data first. And by the way, if we could do voice, we'll do voice, but that's not our core, at least from Packet One strategy perspective. But there lies but on the other hand, there lies a big opportunity as well. If you look at Malaysia, the fixed voice market has been monopolized and dominated for many, many years. And even that market itself is more than 4.3 billion ringgit, which is at least over $1 billion every year. And that's monopolized by one incumbent. And if we can do our coverage well down the road with our connectivity, then there's definitely an opportunity that we can actually tap into. By the way, we can offer you at the same time a triple play, which includes fixed voice as well. So that's one. I think, but from a strategy perspective, we are very careful in terms of we are a broadband company. We're not a voice company, and we do voice. Will be, by the way, we can offer you voice using IP technology.
Yeah, I think we're going to take one very quick question from audience. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question for Michael and Peter, okay? Herman mentioned it. He have a concern about indoor transceiver problems, and I'd like to know what's your solution for his concerns.
Yeah, definitely the indoor coverage is the major challenge we are facing. As a matter of fact, last week, one operator saying that our customer is living in the heaven or hell. Once you get connected, you're happy, very like heaven, but once you're disconnected, you're living like hell because of indoor coverage. So for indoor coverage, yes, we are definitely looking for the Pico BTS as one of our solutions. and also the repeater, the so-called repeater also is one solution. But at the same time, we also work with Wi-Fi, because since the Wi-Fi is available in many devices already. As a matter of fact, our indoor CPE is sort of like a router connect from the WiMAX to the Wi-Fi already, since we provide this service. So for indoor, as a matter of fact, we are thinking, working with some of the Wi-Fi operator and also deploy our own Wi-Fi AP in order to solve some of the indoor CPE as indoor coverage. But it's, of course, at the same time, the people PDS and the repeater definitely is our solution to solve it. Yeah.
Totally agree, Pierre. That's why we're all here in Taiwan. Hopefully we can get an answer from Taiwan in terms of indoor penetration, indoor solutions.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody, thank the panel, and let's give all the panelists a round of applause. Thank you.
Will the guests please move forward, or move to the center of the stage for a group photo?